This week, Microsoft acquired Activision Blizzard for nearly $70 billion, dollars, the largest video game acquisition in history and Microsoft's largest acquisition to date. As a result of this, they now own the publisher of games like Call of Duty, World of Warcraft, Overwatch, Diablo, and Candy Crush from their mobile arm. This has resulted in a lot of takes about what this means for the video game industry, but the kind of mainstream press take that I have seen come out of this has to do with the Metaverse. Satya Nadella came out and talked about how this was an investment in the Metaverse without really kind of explaining why that was. And then I have seen pretty much every other major outlet kind of run with this idea. I just finished reading a Wall Street Journal article that was talking about kind of what this has to do with the metaverse, and the only real takeaway I had from that was that World of Warcraft kind of exists as a sort of metaverse space where a lot of people, live virtual lives within that game and spend a lot of time there. Today's episode of the Daily Podcast, the New York Times, was all about the metaverse, and again, it was mostly just sort of explaining what the metaverse concept is, with very little to do about what specifically this Microsoft acquisition has to do with being a metaverse investment. And the result of this just seems like people have said the word metaverse a lot, and then everyone has just run with the idea that buying a major video game publisher is somehow the metaverse, or this is a quote, big bet on the metaverse. Even Microsoft's own messaging is that. And yet, kind of cutting through all this, it essentially means nothing in the current form here. The definition of the metaverse has been one that's kind of been debated for months and months and months now, but it is generally agreed upon as sort of the next evolution of the internet, where it will be some sort of shared virtual space, either in VR or not in VR, where people kind of just go and exist. Many people have been quick to point out, however, that this sort of thing has already existed, not just for years, but in some cases for decades in video games. And in the sense that video games are the closest thing to the metaverse that we have so far, as opposed to all these other kind of upstart ideas with, blockchain-based metaverses and Facebook's, big metaverse push. So in that sense, yes, technically you could view this as an investment in the metaverse if your only definition is the idea that video games themselves are already kind of the metaverse as is, because we spend so much time in those digital spaces. But what really just happened here is Microsoft bought a very big video game company, and now we'll probably end up with exclusive publishing rights on the Xbox ecosystem and with Game Pass for very big games like Call of Duty and Overwatch and things like that. This is not really a signal that they are making an investment in a specific kind of metaverse concept. They are just reinforcing the idea that a lot of people really like video games and a lot of people really like spending time in these virtual spaces, so they are making moves to kind of be the owner of the most versions of that space there is. And then we've seen kind of just a fragmented vision of this all across the tech world right now. Facebook is so into the concept of the metaverse that they renamed their company Meta. Reportedly, Activision Blizzard tried to sell itself to Facebook at one point before this Microsoft deal, and they were shot down. And that says to me that Facebook is really not leaning very heavily on this idea of video games as the metaverse, and they are going super, super hard on the VR angle of this. In all the kind of fictional versions of the metaverse, Ready Player One, Snow Crash, integrated VR and existing in this virtual space is a part of that, and yet VR tech is not really where it needs to be to create a remotely immersive experience like that. If you've seen Facebook's kind of metaverse plans, they are, their Horizon worlds had these weird legless avatars that you're supposed to use to sub in for yourself at business meetings and hangouts. Over in kind of the NFT blockchain space, we have these decentralized metaverses in places like literally called Decentraland that look like games from 2002. There's currently one making the rounds about a rave, quote, in the metaverse in Decentraland, where it's 10 people standing around doing nothing. Whereas you have a true video game, something like Fortnite, putting on these kind of lavish, elaborately produced virtual shows that seem much closer to what you think of when you would imagine the metaverse in any kind of traditional sense. But all of this is doing to me is reinforcing just how much of a buzzword the metaverse is, and it's just something you say to make investors feel like you're forward thinking and like you are on top of the next thing. If this purchase was made 5 years ago, we wouldn't have heard anything like this. The only conversation would just be about the video games themselves and what this kind of does to the console industry and the tech space and things like that. But now it's this big story of Microsoft invests in the metaverse, even though Microsoft themselves can't even explain what that exactly means in this context, other than owning a bunch of video games that a lot of people want to spend time in. And they are not unique in doing that. There are, countless different games that kind of fit that bill. They already own Minecraft, which you could consider sort of a metaverse space. We have Roblox. You can consider all manner of these things kind of a type of metaverse, and yet all it really comes down to is video games that people like spending a lot of time in, and then these weird kind of side tech projects that are using way worse tech, or you have Facebook going down this VR rabbit hole that could produce substantial results in a year or two or in 20 years. We don't really know, and that has not really been a proven concept as a driver towards this kind of idea of a shared virtual space. So in short, when you hear someone say metaverse, be very, very skeptical of whatever they're saying next, because it almost certainly means nothing in the current landscape. And if we are kind of moving in this direction, yes, it is wise to look to video games to be kind of the leading edge of this. And yet this has been happening for 10, 20 years, long before the word metaverse even existed. And I have not seen that much fundamentally change about that, nor have I seen anything displace video games as being the kind of operative place to spend time in the virtual world. So just be skeptical. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.